episode 4 of Sleepy Hollow, titled For the Triumph of Evil. I enjoyed this episode because it actually gave us a lot as far as, background for our main character, or at least, one of our main characters, Abby Mills, and, how she kind of separated from her sister after they had their event with the demon in the forest. And the way they go about, explaining it, I thought was really well paced and very well done. Initially, they go to see Abby's sister, and she doesn't want to see Abby, but she talks to Ichabod, and he says, he basically explains everything. I believe you. We've dealt with some stuff. We know you're not crazy. We need your help. And she kind of just pushes him aside and says, you have to, like, I'm not gonna help my sister. You should talk to her, and you can talk to her and figure out why I won't. But we're kind of separated now after that event. And Ichabod asks her, and she tells him the story of what happened after they found the demon. And initially we thought, or at least I thought personally, they saw the demon, they passed out for a little bit, and then they were found in the forest, which I believe she actually says it that way early on. But in this episode, we get to see that it wasn't just they saw the demon, fainted for a little while, and then they were found, by I initially thought it was just a random person was just walking through the forest, and that's how they were found, and they were passed out. So obviously it seemed like something was wrong. But we found in this episode they were passed out for 4 days, and they had a search party going through the forest. And when they were found, the man who initially found them, he also saw the demon, but he didn't say anything. And it kind of leads into the main point of this episode, and the main I guess villain of this episode being the Sandman. And I enjoyed this story, how they sort of told the story of the Sandman, and it wasn't just like, when you sleep, he comes, and it's kind of like a Freddy Krueger type thing. It's like, the Sandman will only come after you if you basically let someone suffer when you could have easily helped them out. And I really enjoyed how they, did that role. In the beginning of the episode, Abby's having the dream, and she sees the doctor who, was her sister's first doctor. And then when she wakes up and stuff, she has to go, and she ends up seeing this doctor even though she never actually met her before. But they're connected because of her sister. And it was really cool to see that she believed Abby's sister in the very beginning, but she never helped her out, and it kind of, the demon ended up driving her insane, and so she killed herself. And then, we get more story, and we find out that the man who found Abby and her sister, he also saw the demon, but at the same time, just like Abby, he kept quiet, and, once again, he let Abby's sister suffer when he could have easily said, I did see this weird, thing in the forest. But he, as Abby said, he didn't do that because then he would have lost his 15 minutes of fame for being, a small town hero. So he ends up being killed off, and then, when Abby goes to see him, and before he kills himself, of course, he says, you're next. And Abby is forced to face her past, and you know, not just the fact that she abandoned her sister, but the fact that she is kind of the reason her sister is where she is now in the insane asylum, pretty much. Because obviously, if they helped, or if she helped her sister more than the doctor or even the guy who found them, things would be a lot different compared to how they are now. And it was really interesting to see Abby go through that progression towards the end of the episode, which eventually led her to defeat the Sandman, which I thought was once again really well done. And I enjoyed how they did it sort of in the dream world, and she's watching um, the old interrogation, with her sister, and her, sitting there silently as her sister's trying to say, why aren't you just telling them what we saw? And, like, why are you making me look like the crazy one? And, then her sister gets taken away because she's kind of freaking out, over something that wouldn't make most people freak out. And then Abby's just completely silent, saying, yeah, I didn't see any of this stuff. I don't know what she's talking about. So it was cool how she had to relive that and then face the facts and say, I did do that because I was scared for myself. And in this episode, we get a little bit more background as far as their family history, and we learn that they're foster children. So it kind of explains certain details, in the previous episode when Abby explains how she met the former captain, and she says, I got more fathering in those 5 minutes than I did my whole life. You see that it's not because her parents, or specifically her father, what just wasn't there, but they were orphans because either their parents died or generally that would be it unless both their parents kind of ran out on them, which I'm sure it's possible, but it's highly unlikely. But for whatever reason, they're orphan sisters, and that she says in this episode they were finally in a decent foster home, and I don't know the experience personally, but you see it all the time where even though it's in movies a lot, that type of stuff does happen where you're a foster child, and I know for siblings, I believe at least it's not exactly simple for foster siblings to just grow up in the same home because it's a foster based system. So parents could pick one child and not the other, and the children kind of don't have a say about it. I believe, obviously I don't really know, but I don't think it's exactly just easy for all foster siblings to just grow up together. But they were fortunate enough to have that, and Abby felt like if she was talking all this stuff about seeing a demon in the forest, she would lose all of that stuff, which she kind of ends up doing anyway because of the fact that she kind of let her sister seem like she was crazy, and so they both kind of spiraled out in their own ways, which we got the explanation of in last week's episode. But I thought it was really well done how she eventually faces her own demons, which allows her to defeat the Sandman in the end of the episode. And Ichabod, of course, he helps her out because they're a team, and he had his funny moments. Like I love the energy drink stuff. Like when he drinks it, and if you drink energy drinks, you probably know they don't taste like amazing. At least I don't think they do. Like I don't drink any, but like Red Bull I think tastes really weird, and it has certain stuff in it that makes it taste really powerful because it has to give you energy. And so he tries that, and it kind of makes him like have a little panic attack almost. But I really enjoyed that scene. And when he explains what the Sandman is, and how he learned about it, we also got to see, and I don't know if this will be in every episode, but I'm sure it will be. Every demon that they come across, he'll have a story as to why he knows what it already is, and who told him about it and things like that. And in this one, it was because he used to work with Native Americans, and I enjoyed the little scene. It was a small scene, but it was kind of emotional where he talks about when Abby mentions how Native Americans fought against the government and how a lot of Native Americans were like wiped out, so there aren't many left. And he has a little moment where he talks about how it's unfair. They help build the foundation for certain things to help the 13 colonies establish themselves. And and the last thing he says, like they were my friends, and they sort of move on from that, fairly quick. But that little scene I thought was really well done. It wasn't like he started to cry or anything, but you could clearly tell that he had an emotional problem with that because he was so familiar with these people when he was in the war, and it just blows his mind that something like that could happen. Right after after he'd been working with these people as spies and helping build a country, and then once the country is built, all these different unfair things happen to them, and it kind of just hits him all at once because obviously he didn't live through it, skipping over 200 years, and so it just little information like that, it just hits him all at once. And I just thought that was a really good scene, even though it was fairly short. I thought it was very well done and very well acted by the guy who plays Ichabod Crane. But he had his other moments. There were other funny moments too, like when he was watching the recording of Abby's sister, and he made a mistake and hit fast forward, and he was just trying to figure it out by hitting buttons. I thought that was pretty funny too. But this episode also gave us a little bit of a hint for future episodes as far as the new captain, or Orlando Jones, because I can't remember his actual name in the show, he's sort of coming to terms with what's going on. And, in the end of the episode, when he finds them in kind of like their secret hideout, they say, or well, Abby says, we came here, we thought it would be a good idea because it lets us work and, do what we have to do and get the information we need while still being out of the way and not kind of, making a scene talking about demons and ghosts and stuff like that. And he says, like, I think it's a good idea, I'll get you a key. And when Ichabod says, do you want to know what we found out? He just says, is it done? Abby says, yes. And then he says, that's all I need to know. So it's cool to see that he is coming to terms that, things are going crazy. Because, in the beginning of the episode when the doctor kills herself, when her eye, like, explodes, which looked really gross at first because it didn't look like it was just dust to me. It looked like it was, like, pus or something. But when that happens, I think it was sort of a turning point where it's like, okay, I kind of have to come to terms with things being really weird here. And obviously, Ichabod and Abby have a connection to all this weird stuff. And so he lets them do their own thing. It's kind of like a weird connection, I guess. But it makes me kind of think of like Batman and Lieutenant Gordon, where Gordon's like, all right, all this like super villain crap is going on. You do your thing and figure it out, and then we'll come in after. Except, in Sleepy Hollow's case, Abby and Ichabod, solve all the problems by themselves. And, I guess he'll be there for backup if they need it, in future episodes. And, who knows, maybe he'll end up being involved in something, at some point, and he'll just flat out say, okay, whatever help you need, I'll help you. But I think that'll be a bit later on. And the end of this episode, which, kind of ties into the preview that we got after the end of this episode. Abby goes to see her sister, to basically say, like, I'm sorry for everything I did. Sorry, didn't help you or didn't support you, and let the people know I did see the demon too. And of course, when she goes to the asylum, her sister has escaped. And what I initially thought for this episode was her sister would be, in the episode a lot, but she ended up only being in the one scene. But for next week's episode, she will be in the episode. She's with Ichabod, and however they happen to come across each other, they will be together for for a big chunk of the episode, or probably the whole episode. And then we'll have to see how things play out, after that point, because she is still an escaped patient technically. So however that plays out, they're gonna have to find a way to keep her hidden while also keeping her kind of on the cases to help them out. But I thought it was really well done. Like I said, Ichabod went to see her, and then, when Abby finally comes to terms with herself and she wants to go, make things right with her sister, she doesn't get that chance. And so she'll still have to wait. And for next week's episode, whatever the group might be, it's sort of like a coven or something like that. I guess it would be, I don't know what it would be, a coven of warlocks or whatever. For that episode, she'll have to wait until, all of that is done before they get their chance to, really connect. And they probably won't be able to connect easily because when it's something as traumatic as, you kind of made me seem crazy and got me put into an insane asylum, I don't think you just, like, get over that because someone else came to terms, with themselves, or just because they said, sorry, I put you here, let's be friends. I don't think it'll be as simple as that. And we'll really get to see, Abby and her sister and how they're kind of opposites, because Abby's, even though she's strong, she seems like the more critical thinking type. And then Abby's sister, even though of course she's only been in the insane asylum, she seems more like the tough one because she's generally like working out, it seems, or at least that was in the last week's episode. And in this one, she's not really doing much; she's just talking. But that was just the personality that they gave her when they initially showed her. She's just like exercising and stuff, which I believe now was so that she would have the strength to do what she needed to do to escape the facility. So I'm definitely excited for next week's episode because I really do want to see, Abby's sister in action and how she interacts with Ichabod, considering she now has someone, outside of her sister who is connected to all the spiritual, things going on. And, with Ichabod wanting to solve the problem, he's going to be much nicer to her, and they're gonna have a much better connection than she would with her own sister. So it'll be cool to see how Abby and her sister interact together, and then how her sister interacts with Ichabod, because it'll obviously be two different connections, even though they're all kind of in this spiritual, like, mystery solving triangle now. But it'll be really cool to see how that plays out. So comment below, let me know what you think or what you thought of this episode. Favorite parts, least favorite parts. Did you enjoy the Sandman being the villain? Because personally, like I said, I thought it was a great twist on the Sandman tale. Obviously I'm not like doing like crazy research on the Sandman, so I don't know origin stories and stuff like that. But I thought it was a really cool take on the Sandman being like a demonic creature that'll like steal your soul if you basically just let someone be hurt even though you could have helped. So comment below, let me know what you thought of the villain. Like I said, favorite parts, least favorite parts, and what do you think is going to happen with next week's episode with Abby's sister being a big part of it. Thanks for watching.